Welcome, everybody, to the Soul of the Unexplained. My name is Jim, and with me, as always, is my awesome co host and co creator of the Soul of the Unexplained, my brother from another mother, Mr. Roger Stokes. How you doing, Roger?
I am doing great. And my name is Roger, and that's an R at the beginning and an R at the end. Jim, you have two M's, I have two R's, and that truly is unexplainable. So, welcome to the Soul of the Unexplained. We've got a great episode ready for you tonight. We are going to talk about, sorry, I just
You've
derailed the
rendered me
whole thing.
speechless already, Roger. I was not expecting that. All right.
Well, we are going to discuss season two, episode two of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. And I'm glad. Okay, I just have to put this out there. I'm glad Amazon got their you know what together and got us the actual episode that we paid for so we could watch it and actually do a deep dive tonight. So a little bit crazy. There's been a couple times where I don't know if it's on the history side or if it's on the Amazon side. I'm going to blame Amazon just because it's easier to blame Amazon for pretty much anything. But
Stick it to
yeah,
the
not
man.
yeah, right, yeah. But not getting the content that you paid for or having it released or change like yeah, there's some pretty big mix-ups going on. But yeah, we're over that. We are ready to dive in.
Could not have said it better myself, my friend. So, folks, before we get started here, just want to respond to a couple of folks that have reached out to Roger and I over the past week regarding the very first recap that we did of the first episode of this new season of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Um, Almost across the board, very positive and very supportive of the analysis and recap that Roger and I provided last week. But we had a few that were a little surprised, I guess I should say, at how uh, critical I was of the way that things were presented in last week's episode of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. And I have to say, folks, I kind of laid that out at the beginning of our analysis last week, and I'm going to do it again this week because I believe in holding Beyond Skinwalker Ranch to the same standard as I hold the secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Now, it is no secret that I am a huge fan of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch docuseries. I am a Skinwalker Ranch insider, and Roger is as well. It is something that Roger and I are both very passionate about, we're very fascinated by, and we love the whole community of the Skinwalker Ranch insiders that we have immersed ourselves in. It is just something that we absolutely love as part of our life. And so because of that, we feel that the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch is kind of like the gold standard, if you will. And it's just I feel that because this involves Dr. Travis Taylor to some extent and Eric Bard to some extent, and of course Brandon Fugel in pretty much every episode of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, there is an unavoidable tie-in to the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. So even though Beyond Skinwalker Ranch is produced by a completely different production company, a company called Rail Splitter, whereas The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch is produced by Prometheus Entertainment. So you're naturally going to get differences between the visual presentation and the vibe or the tenor of the show between the two docu series, and that's the way it is. I mean, there we've Roger, tell me if you disagree with this or not, but I just feel the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch they don't speculate and when they do, they tell you that they're speculating. They don't deal in absolutes unless they have the information to substantiate their statements that they're saying something with some kind of, absolute certainty. What they say is that we go where the data leads us. And we think that this might be. And why do we think this might be? Well, because of A, B, C, and D. Because we did this experiment, We base it off of this principle. We form this hypothesis. And so the data is pushing us in this direction. We still can't say conclusively that this is what we're dealing with. Like this past week's absolutely mind blowing episode of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, where Roger and I already did the analysis for that. So you can check that out right here on our YouTube channel. But I expect that same standard from Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. And yes, I am fully aware that neither Paul Babin or Andrew Bustamante are scientists themselves. Paul is a very seasoned investigative journalist, very good at what he does. Andy Bustamante is a former CIA agent. And beyond that, I personally don't know a lot of details, except I know that neither of them hold any kind of scientific degrees, doctorates, or certifications as some of the main scientific investigators at Skinwalker Ranch and the subject matter experts that are involved there do possess. So we're dealing with an apples to oranges comparison already between the two series. So when I sound like I'm getting critical, I am truly, I don't have an axe to grind with either Paul Babin or with Andy Bustamante. I have never met either one of them. So I don't know what kind of people they are. I'm just simply offering my analysis and my critique of what I see them presenting in Beyond Skinwalker Ranch as a docuseries. Nothing more than that. And I am holding it to the same standard that I am holding The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch too. So please, folks, when you watch this, if I end up saying something that maybe you don't like, or you feel that I'm being a little too heavy handed with my criticism on anything that I see, please know that it's not at all that I have an issue with who these people are as individuals. It is
Right.
my right, being a co host of The Soul of the Unexplained, to offer my ultimately meaningless opinion, but an opinion nonetheless. So just had to get that out of the way before Roger and I begin the begin our analysis here. Any thoughts on you, from you, Roger, before we dive in here?
Yeah, no, I think it's the same. I definitely want our viewers to look at both shows with, critical eyes and having that critical thinking cap on and, asking those types of questions. And I know we talked a little bit about this, Jim, but I think, even, some people could say, oh, well, Jim and Roger, they're fanboys of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And while
Guilty,
yes, that
guilty.
term could be applied and used, we do love it and we are part of the insiders, but we're into the fifth season now, and I will give so Dr. Travis Taylor, Eric Bard, Caleb Bench, Thomas Winterton, Jim Morse, Dragon, everybody out there at the ranch, we've had multiple seasons to not only watch and see what they are saying and then back it up with the evidence and talk about their credentials. But we've also met many of these individuals in real life. And so, there we come at it from kind of a different perspective because we've had more of an opportunity to vet that. Now, that's not saying that we think Andy or Paul are being dishonest in any way or trying to do, mislead or that type of thing. We're just doing what we would continue to do for any show, is look at it from that critical eye and offer what we think, you know, our opinions basically on that. And you guys don't have to agree, or you can agree, but what we want to do is we want to start that conversation. We just want to make sure that because of the sensitivity around what is being found and documented at Skinwalker Ranch, that anything tied back to that and the resources being used, right, follows the same scientific method and the same type of thing. So, that's probably where it's going to look like Jim and I are maybe being a little bit more critical of the show than I think some people would be. But at the same time, I think no matter what show, no matter who you are, you got to, that's why I love the Insiders program when we can do the live Q&As, because we can ask those questions. We can ask the tough questions like, well, did you do this? Or why didn't you do this? And they answer that, right? But neither Dr. Taylor nor Eric Bard, Pete Kelsey, any of the people that are experts in their fields, they're not coming down and saying, yeah, because of what we've been told, this is what we think it is. They've offered multiple hypotheses on what is going on there, and there are many things going on there, right? And they're just keep adding to the data. And so it's great that they can talk about all the data points together and they can comment on that because they're an expert in their field. And I really, really appreciate that. And so is it kind of unfair to Andy and Paul because we're holding them to that same standard? Yeah, they're going to have to do a little bit. They're going to have to dig further. They're going to have to research more. They're going to really have to do their homework to use the same type of equipment to understand and explain the way that the other people at Skinwalker Ranch do it. Now, I'm not saying they need to go get new degrees or become scientists, but they can use the same approach and they can use the same terms and look at really, making sure that when they speculate on something that they acknowledge that this is speculation. We haven't determined that. This could be one of so many different things and the fact that I think, and again, maybe they've done this, maybe they haven't, but they do have a wealth of knowledge and resources at their fingertips. It looks like they're able to call and talk to Eric or Travis almost at any time and say, hey, this is what we found, and kind of get their ideas off there. So I'm hoping to see that a little bit more in the future, but that's kind of how I take it. So yeah, I'm going to be probably a little bit more critical just because I think that their backgrounds merit them digging into the data a little bit more.
I completely agree, Roger. And we also want to state, we understand that to an extent, Beyond Skinwalker Ranch kind of has an uphill battle because, unlike The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, where every episode is focused on one location, Skinwalker Ranch, they aren't traveling to other locales to investigate different types of phenomena. The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch is just one show. They're always there. And it's not like Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, where they're every week going to a new location to investigate a new phenomena, a new mystery, a new legend kind of type thing. So because of that, you have to also understand that they're not able to devote, 3, 4 solid months out of the year staying in one place, investigating one area and one phenomena. And if they did, we'd probably stand a better chance of seeing something more akin to what we see with The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. So we have to recognize that it's also very different in that aspect, right, Roger? Because as you said
Yeah.
last week, it's like they're beginning from ground zero or point zero every week when they go to investigate a new location and a new enigma, as it were. So that's a difference as well. So, Roger, one last question before we start this is, are you genuinely interested in this mystery of Mount Wilson Ranch? Because I find it extremely fascinating. I think that it definitely is a place that merits in-depth and detailed investigation and analysis. What are your thoughts, just specifically, real quickly, on Mount Wilson Ranch?
Yeah, when I look at the episode that they did in season one, and they were kind of thwarted with the that snowstorm that came in, I definitely felt like this is a place that they need that merits more investigation. And so, upon seeing the previews and learning that the first episode was going to be them investigating back at Mount Wilson Ranch, I was super excited because there's definitely high strangeness there, and we've seen and been told by other people familiar with the ranch and that have been on there that indeed there are things to the stories and the claims out there. And so yeah, I'm very interested, and I think a lot of the things that we've seen out there mirror what's happening to an extent on Skinwalker Ranch. So yeah, the high strangeness I do believe is there, and so yeah, I'm excited to learn more not only about the history of the ranch, but what Bradshaw, or sorry, not Bradshaw, but Bigelow I was thinking of Bradshaw Ranch.
All right.
But what Bob Bigelow was doing down there too, at the same time, owning both properties, there has to be a connection of some type there. Um, and yeah, I that's why I'm excited because I think you can't do a place or a ranch like that justice in just even one, two, or three episodes, right? I think it's
Yeah,
going to be a place that's we're going to have to go back and continue to study and run experiments on, right? And it sounds like the property owner there is agreeable to having research and people out on the ranch. So it'll be amazing to see what continues to happen in the future.
absolutely. Absolutely. Alrighty, folks. So let's dive in here. The episode is called Go Bigelow or Go Home. And the episode begins with the narrator giving us a recap of what the guys at Mount Wilson Ranch had done during the previous episode, last week's episode, focusing specifically on the conductivity scan done in the lower meadow of the property and how nothing was really how nothing really yielded results until they increased their depth to 100 and then 200 feet, wherein the meter of this device that they were using pegged at both depths. I mean, it went hard right. And of course, one of the Terra Group, Terra Exploration Group guys used the term manta ray to describe whatever might be buried deep in the lower meadow. The scene then cuts to the team gathering at the saloon. Boy, what a great place to gather, right? On the
For sure.
property to plan their next move. Now, Robert Leonard of the Terra Exploration Group, boy, that's a mouthful, uh, begins the discussion by saying, "quote What the heck is going on out here? That's all I can say." Close quote. He goes on further to say, "quote So we got good data, but it's the weirdest thing. The lower meadow, we used the EM34, that's the device they were using, an analog instrument that gives us a number and no pretty pictures. But it will reach 50 feet, 100 feet, and 200 feet to read the conductivity of the soil. And we did 4 lines at each depth. But once we got down to the 100 feet depth, the meter would just peg. So it's hitting something very conductive." Close quote. Robert Leonard's cohort with Terra Exploration Group, and I'm guessing Roger, this guy might be his brother because he sure looks a lot like him. He
Right.
says, "We've never seen conductivity peg on that thing," and of course he's referring to that EM34 device that they did the conductivity survey with. Paul Babin then asks, 200 feet down? And the Terra Group guys confirm, yes, 200 feet down. Andy then says, quote, "Essentially, we're looking at a 200-foot deep chunk of earth. 50 feet into that chunk of earth, you don't see anything. And then at 100 feet, you see high conductivity that lasts all the way to 200 feet," close quote. Robert Leonard then chimes in by saying, "So it's hitting something that's very conductive, but there was one line during the survey where the meter didn't peg. So it's like we hit an air pocket at 200 feet." And then uh, his what is again his Terra Exploration Group coworker is who he's speaking to, and then he, pointing to his coworker, had a theory that it's a metallic object that's shaped like a manta ray. And as soon as he finishes saying that, Roger, Carl, of course, this is Carl Andreasen, Carl Crusher, Jeff McBurney, the owner of Mount Wilson Ranch, and Andy simply laugh in seeming disbelief at the mention of the words manta ray. So Jeff McBurney, the owner of Mount Wilson Ranch, then says, "We've been told that there is a manta ray under here." Close quote. One of the Terra Exploration Group members asks, "A shape of a manta ray, but being a craft?" To which Jeff responds, "Yeah, yeah." The Terra Exploration Group member then says, "Well, that's really funny because I had never heard that term. But me, I'm just imagining something like that, and it came to me that it looked like a manta ray going through the water." close quote. Carl then chimes in by saying, yeah, I mean, they even went as far as to say the one at Skinwalker Ranch was a sport model, and the one is more like a giant manta, a manta ray. They literally said manta ray, close quote. Curiously, Robert Leonard then asked Carl who said that and what technology did they use, close quote. Carl responds by saying, these are people from Bigelow's old team that have leaked photos and information to us that looked through the files when they were up here, close quote. Carl then asks Jeff McBurney, how far down were you told? Meaning, how far down was Jeff told that this craft was? And Jeff then responds, anywhere from 200 feet. Carl, looking at Robert Leonard, says, quote, and the way you describe the shape of that is like everything that we've been told to look for, close quote. Andy then says, quote, of all the creatures that get pulled out of our imaginations to describe an anomaly, how is it that these two gentlemen, without talking to each other, landed on the same description that the Bigelow team used to describe this phenomena, close quote. He then says to Carl, what's so interesting to me is that you and Jeff have been following stories. Paul and I have been following data. So the stories and the data are aligning, close quote. Jeff says that they're correlating perfectly, and Paul then says, quote, if there's something that large under this meadow, it was either placed there and concealed, or it's been there for a very, very long time, close quote. Andy then says, quote, something strange was either developed on Mount Wilson Ranch or discovered. It's a matter of just following the data. That's what Eric Bard tells us to do, anyways. So we're really just taking the same steps that our Skinwalker team counterparts do. Find the data, follow the data, see where it leads, close quote. So Roger, let's dissect a little bit of that because there's a bit to unpack there. Um, Now, I have been following and studying and just maintaining a consistent interest in Skinwalker Ranch since 2006, which is when I read The Hunt for the Skinwalker book by Colm Kelleher and George Knapp. And of course, I've also read Ryan Skinner's books. I've read the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon book that James Lukatsky, Colm Kelleher, and George Knapp have written. I'm a Skinwalker Ranch insider, and I have been since the very beginning of that program. And I have met every single member of the Skinwalker Ranch team except for Uncle Jim Morse. And I haven't met Jim Royston or Sam DeRiso yet. But I've met Eric Bard, Travis Taylor, Caleb Bench, Dragon, Thomas Winterton. And Roger, I don't ever recall hearing the term sport model for any kind of craft that was allegedly buried underneath Skinwalker Ranch or inside the mesa. And I'm not sure where that comes from. I'd really, I guess I would like to find out where Carl gets that from, because in all of the lore and mythology that I'm aware of, I've never heard the alleged craft that is situated somewhere on Skinwalker Ranch, presumably perhaps in the mesa or underground, Homestead 2 or Triangle area, wherever. And of course, pure speculation that there even is one there at Skinwalker Ranch. But I've never heard of it being referred to as the sport model before. Have you, Roger?
I have not. And with all the lore and I mean, there are stories for Skinwalker Ranch, and mind you, these are just stories that there could be a base underneath, like I mean, I guess there's several stories. A military base under there, a base that holds what we would consider a UFO, right? There could be something in the mesa But yeah, I was kind of perplexed when they said like, oh yes, the one at Skinwalker Ranch, right? Kind of like this, top of the line model, and then, the manta ray is out here. I was a little perplexed by that because it's immediately jumping to the conclusion, and saying that what they think is there, and if they're following the data, has to be something that is alien, at least in my opinion, my interpretation, alien in nature or something otherworldly, right? A crashed spaceship. But we don't know, like, there is no proof. We haven't been able to conclusively say at Skinwalker Ranch or anywhere else that says, well, yes, here is a crashed ship. Now we have stories, people in Congress or people in the military testifying before Congress that have said we have recovered, so there's all that stuff out of there, but it's anecdotal until we get more information. Now, if they had something and footage of this thing being wheeled out, on, when Bob Bigelow was there, uh, flying around, things, I mean, then yes, I would lend it more credence, but I don't know. It was an odd. I get that the lore and the stories are fun to jump onto, and seeing the data kind of line up to that story, and I mean, yes, a lot of witness testimony there is pertinent to it, but yeah, to make some of the claims that they stated there, I don't know if I would reach that same conclusion. And really, again, from my knowledge of Skinwalker Ranch, nothing like that has been stated that it is there or using the same terminology.
Well, the only time I can recall hearing the term sport model in any kind of official capacity was is regarding Bob Lazar, right? Uh, Bob Lazar, who for some people is a controversial figure. I'll leave that one up to you, the viewers, to decide what you think of Bob Lazar. I'm not going to comment on that one way or the other. But in several interviews that Bob Lazar has given to multiple outlets, including Joe Rogan's podcast, he has referred to the flying saucers that he claims to have worked on at S4 on Area 51, that he referred to it as the sport model. Um, and he's the only one where I've ever heard that term being applied, prior to Carl mentioning this and tying it into Skinwalker Ranch. I've never heard Caleb or anybody else that we know at Skinwalker Ranch, um, publicly or otherwise, have mentioned something about a sport model UFO. They've referenced some of the stories and allegations and legends and mythologies of you know craft flying into and out of the mesa, all that stuff. But I've never. It just struck me as odd because I'd never heard that term sport model used in the context of Skinwalker Ranch or anything allegedly existing currently or at one time in the past on Skinwalker Ranch. And that's kind of where my confusion on that stems from.
Sure, sure. Makes
Right
sense.
on. So then the scene cuts to Jeff and um, Carl, then show Andy and Paul some items left behind by Bob Bigelow's team there at Mount Wilson Ranch. The focus is on an old school TV projection unit, the kind with the red, green, and blue bulbs that were used for the old big screen TVs back in the 1990s. This was before LED screens, before plasma televisions. Back when a big screen projection TV was this big, huge honking thing that needed like four people to move it, kind of thing.
Right, right.
And Bigelow apparently left three of these projectors at Mount Wilson Ranch. Carl and Jeff have managed to get one of these three projectors working. Andy rather curiously says, while looking over the projector in front of him, that these were not intended for entertainment purposes. That's for sure. close quote. Now, Roger, I'm not sure what specifically Andy means by that comment about being not being intended for entertainment, because it's a TV projector, for heaven's sake. I mean, maybe Bigelow wasn't using it to host Netflix and chill at Mount Wilson Ranch or Friday movie nights at the saloon, heaven forbid. But still, not entirely sure what Andy means by the projector not being intended for entertainment.
Y-
I don't know. You know what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to comment one way or the other and understand what Andy meant by that. Because with the brief things of what they showed us there, right, and that they were able to, of the three machines, they were able to get parts and um, I guess rebuild that one machine, without actually going in and having more of the like diagram of like what is this projecting. It's really hard to say. So I again, it could just be an assumption on Andy's part of like because I could see myself trying to cobble something like that back together and understanding like, oh yes, back in the 90s, you know, I did have like a big screen TV similar to this, and you have the red and the green, blue lights and whatnot, and that helped the projection. But I just don't think we got a really good understanding of like what that projector, that TV projector was supposed to do. And maybe Bigelow had remodified it somehow, but it would have been nice to see almost if we could go back and get a director's cut of that, right? And just get an understanding of what parts were missing, how is this different than a regular TV projector, and
Yeah.
just to help clarify that, right? Like that would have been a huge step in understanding what Andy meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, were these projectors modified in some way, or did he mean that they're not intended for entertainment purposes because they were used exclusively for experiments, similar to what we've seen recently on Skinwalker Ranch, where they're using the laser space cannons, and
Yeah, the
we've seen it
lights.
we've seen in the past. New Salt Laser comes in, and they'll throw laser images that change, and so maybe that's what Andy was referring to. But
Sure.
but Andy mentions that having three of these projectors gave Bigelow some redundancy, presumably in the event of one of these projectors failed, perhaps. I suppose that makes sense, right? So Carl then asks, "Do you remember when Jacques Vallée and the Spielberg film Close Encounters of the Third Kind? There was a French scientist in that movie. The character was named Lacombe, by the way, that was projecting light and sound to try and communicate with extraterrestrials. And that character, Lacombe, from that movie was based off Jacques Vallée. And we have photographs of Vallée up here at Mount Wilson Ranch with Bob Bigelow and the rest of the team. So there's a chance that these projectors might have been part of that original experiment that Bigelow was running back in the day. Close quote. So, Roger, the photo that is shown on the screen while Carl is saying that shows Bigelow and Jacques Vallée and Hal Puthoff together at Mount Wilson Ranch. And there's another still photo at the beginning of the episode that shows a larger group of people that are gathered there. And maybe Eric Davis is one of the people that was up there as well. We just don't know, but we know for sure that Bigelow, Valet, and Puthoff were definitely there. So Paul and Andy then discuss how these projectors could have been precursors to lasers like we've seen used on Skinwalker Ranch, and could have been used by Bigelow's team to elicit some kind of response from some kind of anomaly at Mount Wilson Ranch. They decide that they need to set one of these old school projectors up in the lower meadow and run an experiment. And Paul and Andy set up the old projector in the lower meadow, projecting images onto a screen that is set up in front of the ranch house in the lower meadow. And they'll be using two different generations of thermal imaging, as well as, if you recall, Roger, the UFO DAP, monitor thing, like an AI type thing, a
Yep.
spectrum analyzer, and a device that tracks and monitors all air traffic and satellites that are passing over the area. As darkness falls, they begin the experiment. And the projector fires up and they begin displaying loops of old visual test patterns and stuff on the screen in front of the ranch house. Nothing happens or shows up on the FLIR. So that doesn't necessarily appear to have triggered anything, at least right away. Nor do they see any activity in that 1.6 gigahertz baseline range on the spectrum analyzer. Then they detect a incoming signal at a low frequency. And this was a little interesting. Andy decides to run a low frequency tone at 68 hertz to see if that yields any results. Now, being an audio engineer, folks, I can tell you that 68 hertz is a very low frequency. It's not. It's something you're more likely to feel than to hear. If you have really good hearing, which obviously I do not anymore, but 68 hertz is a very, very low frequency. The narrator says that ultra low frequencies can be used to communicate long distances that can travel thousands of miles through the earth. Then sending a signal on the same low frequency may be the best way to communicate with whatever might be buried 200 feet below them. And this is the narrator talking about all that. Shortly after sending the low frequency tone, Paul and Andy begin seeing what they call a bleed effect on the spectrum analyzer. And Andy turns off well, basically they think that what this is, this bleed effect, is indicative of a response to their signal, their low frequency signal at 68 hertz. Perhaps some kind of communication signal is what they're wondering. Andy says that there's a clear correlation between them broadcasting the 68 hertz tone and the results they're seeing on the spectrum analyzer. He turns off the 68 hertz signal, and the intensity of what the spectrum analyzer shows decreases shortly thereafter, presumably indicating a possible correlation between the two. However, Roger, uh, we do not see them repeat this test multiple times to see if this is truly a repeatable result. So for me, it's kind of inconclusive. This whole bit about them broadcasting the 60 hertz tone and thinking that they're getting some kind of a response, a communication response within that 68 hertz range. Now, perhaps they did run that experiment more than once, and the folks editing the show just showed us one of the times that they ran it. I mean, that's very possible. But still, and Roger, I don't know if you feel the same, but it would erase any doubt of the claim if they had repeated the equipment or the experiments and gotten the same results. I would have liked to have seen more than just that one instance, or at least have them say, "Hey, we repeated this two, three, four more times and got the same result." But as it is, we just got that one instance. So for me, Roger, this one just it's interesting, but it's not rock solid for me to be able to say yes, that was definitely a response to the signal that they sent out.
Yeah, yeah. And so again, I'm not an audio engineer. I don't pretend to understand a lot about, the RF frequencies and the analyzers and the spectrum analyzers that they have. But it would seem to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if you're going to send a signal back at that signal, right, you would probably pick up, because that spectrum analyzer is going to be picking up what's already coming in, but it's going to pick up what they're redirecting back at it. So to me, it makes sense. Like, of course, you're going to see maybe some of this bleed through. Does that make sense?
No, it makes total sense.
And so
you're
like
looking at it
I
the way
don't
you
I
should.
don't so I wish they would have I would love to be able to talk a little bit more about saying like, okay, if you have the spectrum analyzer, how do they, how does that work specific to an extra signal coming in at that, 68 hertz? Um, and what does that red bleed through mean? And right, plus the repeatability of it. Because saying that, well, yeah, definitely it's possible that they are talking to each other and that it could be a communication pattern. Um, it just seems very different because on Skinwalker Ranch, when they're like talking about the 1.6 gigahertz signal things, they've gotten, you know, I mean, yes, they've like broadcast a 1.6 and used a short range one that was amplified somehow through the Mesa. But mostly when they get that 1.6, it's coming from different frequency, or not a frequency, but from different areas. And when they get it, then you do see, on the analyzer that it looks like within that bandwidth, there's a conversation taking place. I don't know if that's true or not, but at least the way Dr. Travis Taylor has talked about how they use that 1.6 gigahertz signal to talk between Earth and space, that's definitely a likely possibility here. I don't know enough about what equipment they were using, especially to broadcast back at it, how that would interfere with what they were first seeing. Because again, it would seem to me that, yeah, if you start adding more signals into it, you're going to get more from, the RF
Right.
spectrum analyzer. At least that's what makes sense to me. And I could be wrong, but it wasn't like a revelation like, oh my gosh, there's something super mysterious or unknown happening here. Did it make you think a little bit? Yeah, but I wouldn't say that it led me to any conclusions of communications happening between two nefarious things or person, agency, non-human intelligence, whatnot.
Yeah, I just simply would have liked to have seen the experiment repeated and yielding the same result, or at least have it acknowledged that they did do it. Because just showing it once, okay, interesting, yeah, that's definitely worth taking note of. But can it be repeated? And we have to answer that question with we don't know, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
No, we don't know. And I think that it definitely, if they go back out there, that would merit more follow-up with more equipment and possible just trying to understand the experiment better and what they were trying to do.
completely agree. Andy then says, quote, we might be reaching the manta ray 200 feet down with a vibration coming from our speaker, close quote. Um, okay, I'm sorry, folks, red flag time. I'm throwing the penalty flag. Being a Raiders fan, I know all about penalty flags, right? Um, so, Roger, do we know for a fact that this thing 200 feet below the ground is, in fact, a manta ray craft? No,
No,
it's
there is
sheer.
no data that has specifically said that is there. There was, like you said, a conductivity experiment that went down 200 feet, between 100 and 200 feet, that showed an anomalous thing there that can be charged. And then when they were running those lines, there was that one line that showed a void or a space, giving the appearance of what it looks like on the surface of that scan would be a manta ray. But definitively saying, oh, our signal hit and bounced off the manta ray and we're connecting with it, that's a pretty far reach. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in my eyes, Roger. It's sheer speculation, and all it does is it panders to the people that just want so desperately to believe in it, and there is no data to confirm it is a manta ray. All we know, as you said, is that it's a large, likely metallic object that quote unquote might be shaped like a manta ray, and it's buried between 100 and 200 feet underground. It is not confirmed to be a manta ray. And I have a serious problem with how this scene played out. Because unless Andy is privy to information that we are not, he just made a blanket statement based in hearsay, right? And that would
Well,
not, it would not hold up in court, Roger, or under peer review by professionals. How is that being, as he said just a few moments before, how is this being led by data? And
what does
I
Eric
find
say
it
all the
deeply
time?
concerning.
Right. And what does Eric say all the time? Correlation is not causation and vice versa, right? You can't say, oh, because we were receiving these signals and we sent a signal back that correlates to the manta ray down in the ground that we know is there and it's sending signals back up. That now is that a speculation? Is that a theory? Is that a hypothesis?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, I would have loved for Andy to say, "Hey, Paul, one speculation I have is that maybe our signal is being bounced down here and back up. We're going to have to look at the data some more and try to confirm whether that's true. We're going to need more, whether it's experiments or things like that. But just to make a blanket statement like that and saying, yeah, it was, and whether Andy or not intended that, the way it came across is that, oh, they know for sure that there's a manta ray, there's a spaceship down there, and they communicated with it. And I'm like, all we know is that there's a potentially metallic object that is highly conductive, 100 between 100 and 200 feet in the ground that has a void beneath it that looks like what we would call a manta ray in the ocean. That's it. That's all you can say. You can't conclusively say that is a spacecraft.
Right.
That is a government vehicle that's been parked there and buried in some thing from the past. Like yeah, it was. I was disappointed at that.
How silly are they going to look if somebody actually succeeds in getting down there, excavates this object, and finds out that it is a not even in fact manta ray shaped because it's not 3D imaging after all, right?
No, no.
And that it's not anything of an off-world exotic or extraterrestrial or interdimensional origin. What if this is just some chunk of metal that's very large? It could be a whole host of things, and they
Sure.
will look absolutely asinine if somebody succeeds in getting down there and finding out what this thing is, and it is not a manta ray shaped craft of some kind. And again, Roger, I expect better of this. I demand better. And if that makes me the arrogant, condescending asshole for saying so, then I'll wear that as a badge of honor because that's just how I feel. Would I like it to be a manta ray spacecraft? You bet I would. And I am absolutely intrigued by the theories and the synchronicities and coincidences that Carl referred to about, or I guess it was Andy referred to. Here's the guy from Terra Exploration Group and uh, Jeff. Two gentlemen that had not presumably talked about the legend of this manta ray craft being underneath the ground here, but yet they still landed on that as a possibility or as something that they claim is in fact there. The simple
It's
fact is
intriguing.
we don't know. We don't know what is there. We don't know anything other than what that image data shows us. And again, if there's something more to it, I'm absolutely open to that possibility. But until somebody provides me with details that are irrefutable, that is in fact justified, Andy is justified in making that claim, I'm going to stand my ground. It does nothing to advance the credibility of the show. And that's what I find really troubling. Because if the guys at Skinwalker Ranch came out and made a claim like this, do you think for a moment that guys like Greenstreet and Mick West wouldn't pounce on that? I mean, they have
Right,
for
right.
they have for stuff that is substantiated as far as data goes. So something like this, it's really, really dangerous ground, a really slippery slope that and I don't know if this is something that the production and film crew kind of pushed them into doing and pushed Andy just into saying something like this, but it's sensationalizing and dramatizing, and that's what I really don't like about the look and feel of some of the things that we see on this. And I'll illustrate that point here right now, because just a few moments later, either way, again, Andy is adamant that they are engaging with this manta ray shaped thing underground. And Andy says, quote, think about this. This is what Bigelow was looking for when he came to Mount Wilson. And he's saying this emphatically. And he says, are we potentially communicating with the highly conductive mass, the rumored downed spacecraft buried in the lower meadow? And folks, you have to watch and listen to Andy's delivery of that. His tone of voice. I mean, he is full on, you know, intense about the way, borderline, I would say, melodramatic, in the way he delivers that last quote that I just read to you folks. And he goes on to say, quote, I can see why Bigelow went crazy with this ranch, the lower meadow. It's absolutely the hottest of hot spots on Mount Wilson, close quote. Now, I can agree with that. That appears to be the case by, by most concerned parties. So the group then get together the following day, again in the saloon, to decide what they should do next. They decide that they need to do more digging. And they decide that digging just isn't feasible in the lower meadow due to the softness of the ground and the history of heavy equipment like that bulldozer getting stuck and bogged down in the mud. So digging or drilling in the lower meadow is absolutely out of the question. So they decide to do more digging at the sinkhole, and they bring in a drill rig to perhaps punch through to the tunnels and or passageways that are alleged to exist beneath this sinkhole. They bring in a drilling rig, and Roger, surprise, surprise, the rig inexplicably shuts down just as it gets in place and is set to begin the drilling process. We have never seen this before, have we? And so, just to put this out there, this drilling rig is relatively new. I think they said it's only about a year old. And Johnny, the drilling rig operator, says he's never had this happen with this drilling rig. He gets a check engine light, and he gets about 9 additional codes, error codes or something signaling that there is an electrical or otherwise operational problem with the drilling rig that shows up on his display, indicating that there is a problem with the rig. So, Roger, we're gonna close this up right now, because what unfolds from here, there's not a whole lot to tell. Long
Right.
story short, no drilling took place. Now, Jeff, I don't know if it was Jeff McBurney or whoever it was that cleared out most of the metal junk that was in that sinkhole, and they were able to build a ramp that goes down into where the sinkhole area is. And the intention was to they drove the drilling rig down to the base of that, and they were going to begin drilling right there at that sinkhole. And quite obviously, the drilling rig stopped working, and they had to pull it back out. And that's essentially where the episode ended, Roger. And so, I guess to kind of sum this all up, again, in the interest of full disclosure, folks, I am 100% fascinated with the story of Mount Wilson Ranch. I do think that there is something worth investigating out there. There is enough history that we do know of pertaining to their relationship with Bob Bigelow, the fact that it's so close to Area 51. And there are some really fascinating legends that are out there about what is alleged to have taken place at Mount Wilson Ranch and what is allegedly still located buried deep beneath the surface at Mount Wilson Ranch. So I'm not saying there's nothing to see here, folks, because I do believe that there is. And what I would recommend strongly to all of our subscribers and all of our viewers, check out Carl Crusher's YouTube channel, because Carl has been doing an absolutely fabulous behind the scenes and in depth documentary type features on his YouTube channel of the research and the investigations that he has been participating in at Mount Wilson Ranch. So you'll learn a lot more and get a little better insight into what's going on at Mount Wilson Ranch by watching some of those videos that Carl's got up there. And so, really, Roger, if I'm being honest, this episode was by and large a disappointment to me because it really didn't advance what they had happened in the previous episode. Not that I was expecting any kind of resolution to be made. I didn't. There's no way I was expecting them to get through and get down into the tunnels. And lo and behold, hallelujah, they find the UFO. I that was not at
Yeah.
all something that I was expecting to unfold in this episode. What I was expecting to unfold in this episode was a hell of a lot better than what we got. And again, this is not a personal attack on Andy. It's not a personal attack on Paul. If anything, I'm tempted to place some of the blame, if not most of the blame, on this production company, Rail Splitter. And I don't even have an axe to grind with them. I'm just simply saying I don't like the way that they present it, as opposed to the way the secret of Skinwalker Ranch is presented, because this seems a hell of a lot more contrived. Whereas the secret of Skinwalker Ranch, I don't see anything being contrived and gimmicky on the secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And it just seems that there's too much theatrics. There's too much. It seems like some of it is scripted to me, and I don't know if you get that feel as well, Roger. But um, the episode was just disappointing to me. I would have liked to have seen more than what we got. I would have liked to have seen them give more explanation as to why is Andy so adamant that there is a manta ray craft specifically, and where is he getting his information from? How is he forming that opinion that makes him feel so strongly that there is in fact a downed UFO, a downed spacecraft? Because that's what the legends say. But this is supposed to be, an investigation to falsify or verify what some of these ancient legends and stories are all about, just like they've been doing on the secret of Skinwalker Ranch. So it
Right.
can be done. Why it's not being done, there could be very valid and justifiable reasons for why they're not going into greater detail, least of which this is not a show that focuses specifically on Mount Wilson Ranch. Now there's an idea. Maybe we should get a Mount Wilson Ranch docuseries all of its own accord. I would love to see that happen. I think it's very worthwhile to make something like that happen. I'd love to see Carl Crusher and Jeff McBurney and all these guys. I'd love to see Chris Bartell go out there. And we know that Chris has been there at least one or two times. So I would just like to see a more thorough investigation with actual scientists, with actual anthropologists and or archaeologists, and with the people that are subject matter experts with high-tech equipment. And I realize that's probably asking way too much. So again, that's just me, with perhaps me and my unrealistic expectations. And I fully admit that might be
Well,
what's in
Jim,
play here.
when it comes to expectations and things like that, you are a Raiders fan, so you might have to lower those just a little bit.
You had to go there, didn't you, you son of a...
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's just how I feel, folks. I still like the series. I'm still going to watch the series, but I really hope that they don't get so melodramatic with the way that, and here's the thing is again, and I really don't mean to, I don't have a personal issue with Andy. It's just the way Paul is not does not seem to be that type of personality where it's like, hey, I've got a camera on me, so I'm going to get really into this.
Yeah.
I guess I would just like to see Andy tone it down a little bit, maybe. His excitement and enthusiasm. I mean, I'm sure if I were out there, I'd be geeking out and freaking out to some of this as well. But there's got to be a level of decorum that you have to exhibit in order to be taken seriously when if in fact your intention is to be taken seriously. And I would hope that that's what they want, particularly being tied in with the secret of Skinwalker Ranch, which is all about, you know, maintaining a professional demeanor and, that decorum throughout their show. And I don't feel that much of a kinship between the secret of Skinwalker Ranch and Beyond Skinwalker Ranch from these first two episodes of this season. And again, folks, apologies if that sounds harsh, but that's the way that I see it. My expectation, my standard is perhaps a little higher, and some would, you know, accuse me of being unrealistic in that expectation. And I'll take that because that's just what my 2 cents on the matter are. I do still like the series. I am still greatly fascinated with Mount Wilson Ranch. I think it is a legitimate mystery, and I would love to see a greater, more thorough investigation being done. And that's all I have to say. Roger, how about you?
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree, spot on assessment, and I think Beyond Skinwalker Ranch has a lot of potential, and yeah, I think that there are some exciting things to come, and yeah, I'm just going to mention that you in talking about the whole Mount Wilson and the ranch and doing more investigations out there. Well, on an Insider Live Q&A tonight, a couple of people asked like, "Hey, we would love to see um, a Mount Wilson ranch investigation in conjunction with Skinwalker Ranch," and I think Eric said something to the tune of, "I like the way you think," but he wouldn't go in and say anything more.
Yeah, that was
So,
that was I think that was actually on Jeff Freeman's
oh, was that? Yeah. Oh, yes, you're
podcast.
right.
Yeah.
Jeff Freeman.
Yeah, so it
Sorry.
wasn't part of the Skinwalker Ranch
What wasn't part
Insider
of the insiders,
Q&A.
but yeah, no, that was Jeff
But
Freeman. You're
yeah,
right.
there's clearly some degree of acknowledgement there from Eric Bard regarding the mystery of Mount Wilson Ranch, and that cannot be overlooked. So yes, I think there is a mystery there. It does merit further investigation. Um, I just have to say, for these first two episodes of season two of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, I really just wish they had a different style of the way they present things, and I wish they were more. I don't. I hate to use the term professional, but that's the only word that's coming into my feeble mind at the moment. So forgive me for not being more articulate and expressing that viewpoint. But as you say, Roger, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to see what other uh, locations that they're going to be uh, doing for the next couple of episodes for Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, and I'm looking forward to viewing those and analyzing those right alongside you, Roger, and seeing where this team of Paul and Andy is going to take us next, because there are several legitimate mysteries out in the world that I would love to see a brighter light shining upon. They say the greatest disinfectant is sunlight, and I would love to see Paul and Andy bring some sunlight, not so much the drama and the theatrics, but I would love to see them really, show us things that maybe we've never seen before, and give us some technology that shows us things that we've never seen before, and that's what I'm hoping for. And
Exactly.
I'm not giving up my hope. And again, folks, I don't hate these guys. I have no personal axe to grind with either of them. It's just I have to be honest with how I feel regarding what I see and what I expect, and it is what it is.
I agree. So, yeah, hopefully, really good things to follow. And yeah, we'll keep you, our subscribers, posted. Look next week for, um, episode season 2, episode 3. But until then, thank you for listening to our recap, and we do hope that you enjoyed it. And definitely, if you have feedback, comments, concerns, questions, let us know. Jim and I are always opening and have a listening ear. So,
Absolutely. And you can hit us up on Facebook as well. We are at the Soul of the Unexplained on Facebook. And so feel free to reach out in the comments or right there on Facebook. And don't forget, folks, coming up this weekend, Roger and I are going to be hosting a roundtable discussion with some of our very dear friends and colleagues to kind of do a 1 year look back on the bombshell interview that David Grush did with News Nation and, of course, Ross Coulthart. And so we're going to kind of just have a roundtable talk about how far things have come and how things are looking for where this particular topic of UFO, UAP disclosure is headed in the near future and in the more distant future as well. And that will be coming up this weekend, and right here, look for it on the Soul of the Unexplained YouTube channel. So if you're not a subscriber yet, we hope that you'll hit that subscribe button right down there, and hit the like button, because Roger and I, we like likes. Even though I may
like,
not be a
like.
likable guy, I like likes. So anyhow, folks, thank you for listening to this episode, this recap of Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. And just have an awesome weekend. Have an awesome day wherever you may happen to be. Hope that you all find peace and happiness in what you're doing. And Roger and I will see you next time right here on the Soul of the Unexplained. See ya.